The October fog, a perennial shroud over the sprawling chaos of London, had crept in with the evening tide, pressing its gray spectral fingers against the window panes of 221B Baker Street. It was a damp, chilling presence, one that seemed to muffle the very sounds of the city, reducing the clatter of carriage wheels and the cries of street vendors to a muted, almost mournful symphony. Inside, however, a different world held sway, a bastion of warmth and intellectual fervor against the encroaching gloom. From my usual seat beside the hearth, I watched the fire dance and spit, its flickering light casting long, distorted shadows across the room. The familiar comfort of our shared quarters was a welcome antidote to the dreary evening. The air was thick with the scent of old leather from the well-worn armchairs, the sweet acrid aroma of Holmes's shag tobacco, and the faint dusty perfume of countless books and chemical experiments. Every object in the room, from the violin case propped against the wall to the chaos of papers on Holmes's desk, was a testament to the singular mind of the man who dominated the space. I had been attempting to read the evening paper, but my attention was drawn again and again to my companion. Sherlock Holmes was a study in contrasts. He sat opposite me, his lean, angular frame folded into his armchair, a long-stemmed pipe clenched between his teeth. One moment, he was a statue of stillness, his gray eyes fixed on some unseen point in the distance, his mind clearly far away, navigating the labyrinthine corridors of some complex problem. The next, he would be a whirlwind of energy, pacing the length of the room like a caged tiger, his sharp, hawk-like features animated with the thrill of a new idea. Tonight, he was in one of his more contemplative moods. The silence in the room was broken only by the crackle of the fire and the soft rustle of my newspaper. For the better part of an hour, he had not spoken a word, lost in a deep reverie. I knew better than to disturb him during these moments. His mind, I'd come to learn, was a finely tuned instrument that required periods of quiet reflection to process the vast amounts of information it absorbed. "Watson," he said suddenly, his voice cutting through the silence with its characteristic sharpness, "you have been staring at me for the past 10 minutes. Your paper must be exceptionally dull this evening." I confess I was startled. I had thought my observations subtle, but little escaped Holmes's notice. "I was merely reflecting on the nature of your work, Holmes," I replied, folding the newspaper and setting it aside. "It strikes me that you are a man who thrives on the unusual, the bizarre. A straightforward case holds little appeal for you." He took a long draw from his pipe, the embers glowing brightly in the dim light. "The world is full of obvious things, which nobody by any chance ever observes, my dear Watson. A straightforward case is by its very nature a puzzle with all the pieces laid out in plain sight. Where is the challenge in that? It is the cases with a touch of the fantastic, the ones that defy easy explanation, that truly test the limits of human reason." He gestured with his pipe towards the window, where the fog swirled like a restless spirit. "Out there in that great grimy city are a million stories unfolding at this very moment. Most are mundane tales of love, loss, and commerce. But every now and then, a story emerges that is different, a story with a thread of the extraordinary woven into its fabric. Those are the stories that interest me." As if on cue, the quiet of our evening was shattered by a sudden frantic clatter from the street below, followed by the sharp, insistent ringing of our doorbell. The sound was not the measured, polite ring of a casual visitor, but the desperate, urgent summons of someone in great distress. Holmes raised an eyebrow, a flicker of interest in his eyes. "It seems, Watson, that a story of some interest may have just arrived at our doorstep." Mrs. Hudson is not one to be trifled with at this hour. This must be a matter of some urgency." He had barely finished his sentence when our landlady, Mrs. Hudson, appeared at the door, her face a mixture of apology and concern. "A lady to see you, Mr. Holmes," she announced, her voice slightly breathless. "She seems most distressed. I told her it was late, but she insisted." "Show her in, Mrs. Hudson," Holmes said, rising from his chair. He moved to the mantelpiece where he stood with his back to the fire, his tall, commanding figure silhouetted against the flames. It was a pose I had seen him adopt many times, one that allowed him to observe a new client from a position of authority and control. The woman who entered the room was a vision of elegance, yet her composure was clearly frayed at the edges. She was dressed in a fine traveling cloak of deep blue velvet, the hood thrown back to reveal a face that was both beautiful and pale with anxiety. Her eyes, wide and luminous, darted around the room, taking in the cluttered but comfortable space before finally settling on Holmes. She clutched a small, beaded reticule in her gloved hands, her knuckles white with tension. "Mr. Holmes," she asked, her voice a trembling whisper, "I am told you are the man to whom one turns when all other hope is lost." "I am Sherlock Holmes," he replied, his tone softening slightly in the face of her evident distress. "And this is my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson. Pray, take a seat by the fire, madam. You are shivering. Let me have Mrs. Hudson fetch you a cup of hot tea. You have clearly been through some ordeal." He guided her to the chair I had just vacated, his manner a surprising blend of professional detachment and gentle reassurance. The woman sank into the chair, her body trembling. As she loosened her cloak, I could see that she was a lady of high society, her dress of the finest silk, a string of pearls gleaming at her throat. Yet her expensive attire could not conceal the raw fear that radiated from her. "Thank you, Mr. Holmes," she said, her voice gaining a little strength. "My name is Lady Eleanor Vance, and I fear I am in desperate need of your help." Holmes nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. "Please, Lady Vance, compose yourself and tell us everything. Start from the beginning and omit no detail, no matter how trivial it may seem to you." She took a deep breath, her gaze flickering towards the fog-shrouded window, as if she feared something might be lurking outside. "It began a fortnight ago," she started, her voice low and strained, "with the shadows." "Shadows?" Holmes prompted, his interest piqued. "Yes," she said, her eyes wide with a remembered terror. "A figure, a man, I believe, seen lurking near our estate, Vance Manor, in the twilight hours. Our groundskeeper saw him first, a tall, slender silhouette moving among the trees at the edge of the property. He thought it was a poacher, but the figure vanished before he could get a closer look." She paused, twisting the reticule in her hands. "Then, a few days later, I saw him myself. I was in my bedroom, preparing for the evening, when I glanced out the window. He was standing by the old oak tree at the bottom of the garden, a dark, motionless shape against the fading light. There was something about his stillness, his silent observation, that filled me with a dreadful sense of foreboding. It felt as though he was not merely passing by, but watching the house, watching me." "Did you get a clear look at this man?" Holmes asked, his voice calm and measured. Lady Vance shook her head. "No, it was always at dusk, and he was always at a distance, just a tall, dark shape. But his presence was palpable. It was an intrusion, a violation of our peace." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Then came the symbol, the crimson shadow." "The crimson shadow?" I echoed, intrigued by the poetic and yet sinister phrase. "Yes," she said, her hand trembling as she reached into her reticule. She produced a small, folded piece of paper and handed it to Holmes. "The morning after I saw the figure in the garden, I found this painted on our front door." Holmes unfolded the paper. On it was a crude but striking drawing of a symbol. A simple, elongated shadow, painted in a deep, blood-red color. It was a stark, unsettling image, primitive and yet filled with a strange, symbolic power. The paint was still wet, Lady Vance continued, her voice barely audible. It was as if someone had crept up to our very doorstep in the dead of night to leave this warning. Holmes studied the drawing with intense concentration, his brow furrowed. "And this symbol has appeared more than once?" "Twice," she confirmed. "The second time was 3 days ago on the gate to the walled garden. The same crimson shadow. The same feeling of being watched, of being hunted." She buried her face in her hands, her composure finally crumbling. "And now my husband is gone." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. The mystery had deepened, taken a darker, more personal turn. "Tell us about your husband, Lord Vance," Holmes said gently after a moment of respectful silence. Lady Vance looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "My husband, Lord Henry Vance, is a good man, Mr. Holmes. A kind and honorable man. He is a man of routine, of habit. He has never been one for surprises or unexplained absences. 2 nights ago, he retired to his study after dinner, as he always does. He said he had some papers to attend to. I went to bed, and when I awoke the next morning, he was gone." "Gone?" Holmes repeated. "You mean he did not come to bed at all?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "His bed was untouched. I sent the butler to his study, but he was not there. The room was in perfect order except for the window, which was unlocked and slightly ajar. There was no note, no sign of a struggle. It was as if he had simply vanished into thin air." "And you have informed the police, of course?" I asked. She gave a weary sigh. "Yes, Dr. Watson. Inspector Lestrade of Scotland Yard has been to the estate. He was polite, but I could see he believes Henry has simply left me, that this is a domestic matter. He spoke of debts, of another woman, but I know my husband. He would never do such a thing. He would never leave me without a word." Her voice broke, and she struggled to regain her composure. "The inspector does not see the connection, Mr. Holmes. He dismissed the shadowy figure as a local vagrant, the painted symbols as a childish prank. But I know they are connected. I know that whoever has been terrorizing me is responsible for my husband's disappearance." She looked at Holmes, her eyes pleading. "Mr. Holmes, I am at my wit's end. I am living in a state of constant fear. I feel as though I am being watched from the shadows, that I'm a prisoner in my own home. Please, you must help me. You must find my husband and uncover the meaning of this terrible crimson shadow." Holmes had listened to her entire account with an unwavering, almost unnerving focus. His eyes, which had been filled with a languid boredom only moments before, were now alight with a fierce, predatory gleam. The game, as he would say, was afoot. He took a step closer to her, his voice low and intense. "Lady Vance, you say your husband's study was in perfect order. Are you certain of this? Was there nothing out of place? Nothing that struck you as unusual?" She hesitated, her brow furrowed in thought. "No, everything was as it should be. His papers were neatly stacked on his desk. His pen was in its holder. His favorite armchair was pushed back from the desk as if he had just risen from it." "And the window?" Holmes pressed. "You said it was ajar. Is it your husband's habit to leave the window open at night, especially in this damp October weather?" "No, never," she replied immediately. "Henry was always meticulous about locking the windows and doors before retiring for the night. He was a man who valued security and order." "Interesting," Holmes murmured, more to himself than to us. He began to pace the room, his hands clasped behind his back, his mind clearly working at a furious pace. A man of habit, a man of order, disappears without a trace, leaving behind an unlocked window and a series of cryptic, threatening symbols. This is no ordinary case of a missing person, Lady Vance. This is something far more complex, far more sinister. He stopped his pacing and turned to face her, his eyes boring into hers. You were right to come to me. The police, with their focus on the mundane and the obvious, will be of little use here. They see a missing husband. I see a carefully orchestrated campaign of terror, culminating in a disappearance that is meant to look like anything but what it truly is. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a dramatic whisper. Tell me, Lady Vance, did your husband have any enemies? Any old grievances? Any dark secrets from his past that might have come back to haunt him? The question seemed to strike a chord with her, a flicker of something. Fear, uncertainty, perhaps even guilt, crossed her face before she quickly masked it. My husband is a respected member of the community, Mr. Holmes. He has no enemies that I am aware of. Her denial was a little too quick, a little too forceful. I saw Holmes notice it, a subtle tightening of his lips, a brief, almost perceptible nod. He had planted a seed, and he knew it. He straightened up, his tone becoming brisk and businesslike once more. Very well, Lady Vance. I will take your case. Dr. Watson and I will travel to Vance Manor tomorrow morning. I must see this crimson shadow for myself, and I must examine your husband's study before the trail, if there is one, grows any colder. A wave of relief washed over Lady Vance's face, so profound that it seemed to physically lift a weight from her shoulders. Oh, thank you, Mr. Holmes. Thank you. I knew you were my only hope. Hope is a luxury we cannot yet afford, madam, Holmes said, his voice a stark reminder of the gravity of the situation. For now, we must deal in facts, in observations, in deductions. Go home, Lady Vance. Lock your doors and speak to no one of this visit. The person or persons we are dealing with are clearly cunning and ruthless. We must not alert them to our involvement. He escorted her to the door, his manner once again a model of professional courtesy. As she descended the stairs, her footsteps echoing in the quiet house, Holmes turned back to me, the firelight casting his sharp features in a demonic glow. The languor was gone, replaced by a restless, almost joyful energy. His eyes shone with the thrill of the hunt. He was a man transformed, a creature in his natural element. Well, Watson, he said, rubbing his hands together in gleeful anticipation, what do you make of it? It is a most singular and disturbing affair, Holmes, I replied, still trying to process the strange tale we had just heard. A shadowy figure, a cryptic symbol, a vanished lord. It is like something out of a Gothic novel. Precisely, he exclaimed, his voice ringing with excitement, and that is what makes it so fascinating. The symbolism, Watson, the theatricality of it all. This is not the work of a common criminal. This is the work of an artist, a master of psychological warfare. The crimson shadow, it is a signature, a calling card. It is meant to inspire terror, to convey a message of implacable vengeance. He began to pace the room again, his mind racing ahead, connecting threads that were still invisible to me. And Lady Vance, and she is not telling us everything. Did you see the look in her eyes when I asked about her husband's enemies? There is a secret there, Watson, a dark chapter in Lord Vance's past that she is desperate to keep hidden. That is where the key to this mystery lies. He stopped in front of the fireplace and stared into the flames, his expression one of intense concentration. The sounds of the city seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of us in that small, warm room on the precipice of a new and dangerous adventure. The fog pressed against the glass, a silent, waiting presence. The game was afoot, and the first move had been made. But as I looked at Holmes's animated, almost feral expression, I could not shake a feeling of deep unease. The crimson shadow, whatever it represented, felt like an omen of dark things to come. Holmes turned to me, a grim smile playing on his lips. His voice when he spoke was low and resonant, filled with a chilling certainty that sent a shiver down my spine. "But this is no mere case of a missing person, my dear Watson," he declared, his eyes gleaming with a cold, hard light. "This is a declaration of war, and I fear that for Lord Vance, the battle may have already been lost. We are not just searching for a man. We are hunting a ghost, a specter from a past that refuses to stay buried. And I have a distinct feeling that this crimson shadow is not just a mark of warning, but a stain of blood that has yet to be shed."